I'm Stephanie Fleming alongside Hayden Cowie, and welcome to the last round, brought to you by the Spanglish World and her networks on Zingo TV channel 250 and 251. Please remember to download both the Zingo TV app on the respective app stores and iOS and Android devices. While you download, make sure to rate and leave a comment. This app is completely free. Zingo TV is also available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire and Fire TV sticks, Roku and Roku sticks, and all smart TVs 2016 forward. Hey Hayden, how's it going tonight?
Hey fight fans, I'm doing great. Welcome to this edition of The Last Round with my co-host, Stephanie Fleming. Thank you for joining us this evening. How's everything going?
Oh, I'm doing great. Super excited for another edition. I'm really glad we got the bell noise in.
Trying it out. Let's see how it goes, huh?
Exactly.
So, Steph, I want to jump right in. We've got so much to cover, so much happening right now in the wonderful sport of boxing. We're going to start off in the latest news from what I like to call the mothball series. We look like we might be on the verge of resurrecting a comeback from Oscar De La Hoya, who drops that bombshell this week. What do you say to that? What do you think about Oscar coming back? What weight should he fight at? And who do we want to see Oscar's fight, if anybody?
I mean, how exciting. It seems to be a very trendy thing now for the old, very popular retired boxers to be coming back, bringing fans out of the stands and getting everyone to tune in. So anything boxing, I think, why not? Who would I like to see him fight?
Yeah.
I can't necessarily pinpoint anyone right now. I think he has to be really particular about who he is picking, especially for his comeback fight. But it's going to be an interesting one to see, that's for sure.
Yeah, what weight do you think he should fight at? I mean, the last time I saw him, pardon the expression, but he looks like the guy who ate Oscar De La Hoya. I want to know what weight he's actually going to be able to make.
I mean, and that's a battle too, because I mean, as I'm sure most people know, the more you age, the harder it is to cut weight, sort of thing. So finding a weight that he's comfortable at without making all of his training coming back about the weight loss would be great. Obviously, a higher weight, like he last fought at, probably isn't going to serve him very well.
Yeah, I think Bernard Hopkins served him pretty well at that weight. And if I remember correctly, he barely got by Felix Sturm with a gift decision. So I don't think middleweight is where it's at, especially if he's carrying a little bit of middleweight. Look, I think maybe light welterweight, that might be a tough one for him to make. He'd have to really squeeze into that body. I think looking at him, I'm seeing maybe junior middleweight, and it may be a safe place. It's not super deep when you get outside of the top 15, 20 guys. I don't think he's looking for a title shot or a big name contender to announce a comeback. Probably something just to get in, shake off some years of ring rust and move around a little bit. It'd be interesting. You know, what I find is that in that empty space is an echo for the cry of where is Felix Trinidad and what's he doing? Has he gotten the news yet? That would be interesting and intriguing fight for me to see if as long as Tito's not in too good a shape.
Yeah, for sure. How do you see that fight going?
A rematch between the two of them at this point, depending on what kind of shape Tito's in. I don't know, man. The first time I really thought that was a controversial fight. I could have seen it going either way. I tended to lean a little bit the Oscar De La Hoya way, basically based on the amount of work he put down early on, ring generalship, how he boxed. It was a beautiful fight. As we all know, Oscar's biggest critic has always been his father. And out of all of his wins, his father was never one to show that he was impressed. After that fight, he told Oscar that that was his best performance to date. So, I personally think it was one of his best. I can go to several notable fights that he had, but I don't know. It could go the same way, depending, again, like I said, on how Tito has maintained himself. And surprisingly, it could be lopsided in favor of Tito, because if we look back at the career of Felix Trinidad, he didn't really sustain much damage. He didn't have a super extensive amateur career that put a bunch of mileage on him, and he didn't fight on too far beyond his years. I think that moving up a little bit and taking on the likes of Bernard Hopkins was probably the single worst thing that ever happened to him in his career. It was one and done. He didn't really put himself through anything after that, and I think that was a smart decision. He made lots of money, moved back to Puerto Rico, as far as I know, and has enjoyed a pretty comfortable life. So he may come out, if he's staying in shape, if that's what he does, he could come back and look really impressive. He didn't really take much damage in his career. He sure did a lot of dishing out of damage. All right, so still in the mothball series, we saw 41-year-old Sakio Bika, and who's never been in a pretty fight, as far as I'm concerned, come back against 37-year-old Sam Solomon, who's never been in a less than gritty fight. And we saw Bika come out in kind of a lopsided, insignificant fight. We had a really nasty clash of heads. Both guys got cut. Again, gritty and ugly. It was a sloppy affair. I don't understand this need for the past fighters to come back out of retirement so far removed from their heyday, especially. Do you think this is dangerous? Do you think it's a dangerous practice, or you think it's okay as long as we're matching them up on the same level?
I think, anything that I think generates fans and gets people watching boxing again that isn't hauling celebrities or YouTubers like the Jake Pauls and the Logan Pauls into boxing, but still generating the same chingle, to me, is a good thing. I think that they've fought for years and years and years, and they've earned my respect enough to say that they should step in the ring if they feel they can step in the ring. Of course, a lot of factors play into that, like their health, how many fights, how many knockouts they've endured, those types of things. So as long as they're safe, they pass their medicals, who am I to say no? I'd rather see boxers come out of retirement than YouTubers try and be boxers. And that's the honest truth there. But I think, for definitely Oscar De La Hoya, it depends on what he's walking around at right now, which I imagine is probably a little heavier on the scale than he's going to be fighting for sure.
Yeah, looking more like a light heavyweight than his past middleweight glory there for a bit. You mentioned the Paul brothers and these cards, and what's surprising is that we're finding ourselves in the position where we've got a YouTube prank sensation Paul having headlining a card that sees the likes of former champion Regis Prograis and UFC phenom Frank Mir. Mm-hmm. We have a few other legitimate fighters on that undercard of that fight. What do you say to that?
It disturbs me to no end to think of the blood, sweat, and tears that these fighters have put into boxing for years and years and years, and to be on the undercard of someone who has less talent less passion, less years of dedication, less experience. I mean, some of these guys have more talent in their pinky finger than Jake and Logan Paul have in their entire body. You know, when it comes to boxing, their fight IQ is so low, I really don't think that they should be on the cards at all. I mean, granted, they've come a long way, and to look at some of their training clips and stuff, they don't look like just street brawlers, but I really don't think that they should be headlining cards. That's just my opinion, and
Yeah, they
that's
do look like they are
opinion.
seriously putting in the work. Yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
They do look like they are putting in the work. They do absolutely. I saw Paul versus Robinson, and Robinson came out swinging. He's an athlete. He's competitive, and he came out swinging. He went for broke. Clearly not at the same level as Paul. Paul, more than amateur effort. Came out, weathered the storm, covered up, did what he had to do, moved around, and when the opening came, took it. So I'll give him that in terms of credit, but I certainly think we found ourselves in an interesting predicament where someone who's not had an amateur career at all and just recently jumped into the boxing ring is in the spotlight and headlining a card with former world champions of their respective arts on it. So, it just shows that it's a sign of the times, and maybe boxing and the athletes in it will take a page out of Paul Promotions and start to market themselves accordingly and take some of the marketing responsibilities and control out of the hands of the big name promoters. I'd like to see some of these fights made amongst the fighters and stop waiting for the organizations and waiting for the promoters to get off their laurels or stop hemming and hawing or nickel and diming one another and really make these fights happen, because the only winners right now, it seems, are the promoters and the organizations, not the fans, for sure. Moving on, we had a fight last week with Campbell Hatton, son of Ricky Hatton, against Jesus Ruiz. I have to say that looking at that, and to be fair, he doesn't have much of an amateur career, Campbell. I think he just wanted to turn pro and get on with it. But he's a far cry from his father in terms of skill in his pro debut. I won't take him to the nth degree and say towards the height of his father's career, but even pro debut, there's a huge difference. I think he's being trained by his uncle and not his father. But did you happen to catch that fight?
I didn't catch that fight, no, unfortunately. I had heard a little bit about him and in the various groups and things that were on, and yeah, that's the rumblings. He's not as talented, but then again, you never know. Sometimes the underdog fighters sort of come out of nowhere. I wouldn't count him out just yet. Put it that way.
Oh no, he comes from a great lineage of a fighting family, and he's being trained by a good trainer, and he's got great support in his father, who looked proud as punch, teary-eyed. He said he was under his mask. He was happy. He was grateful that he had his mask on. I think we saw some classic things that you would see from an amateur, actually, in terms of the fact that he was wasting some punches, a little flingy, a little wild, leaping in a little bit, a little lungy, and spending more energy. He looked spent. I mean, he looked, even minutes, 5 minutes after the fight, during interview, he was still struggling to catch his breath. So I don't think that was attributed to a lack of conditioning or anything. He just looked like he spent a whole lot of energy doing something that could have been a lot easier for him. And I think it was a good fight for him to take against an opponent like this, not so dangerous. But he went in there and did what he was supposed to do. Ruiz he was never in any danger of being successful in winning that fight. So I think he's going to get his comeuppance on the job. It's going to be some on the job training. Mm-hmm. We've got another legacy fighter, Tim Tszyu versus Dennis Hogan, son of Kostya Tszyu, or Kostya, however you say that. I've always struggled with it. I think Kostya may struggle with it because he's a Russian Australian, so the accents definitely combine. Um, I think this kid at 18-0 and 14 knockouts, man, he's definitely got his father's power. A little bit different style, a little bit more angular, a little bit more active. Kostya Tszyu was certainly more economical in what he did, and he's much bigger than his father. When you look at the frame this kid carries, it's pretty impressive. He fought Dennis Hogan and was able to stop Dennis Hogan, who actually had given Charlo, some work there, and looked really impressive doing it. I'm looking forward to seeing this kid advance and pretty quickly. He's 26 years old at 18-0. We should expect them to be moving up quickly and looking to challenge for some sort of at least national or regional title sometime soon. He's not young, so the clock is on him, and I'd like to see more from him. He certainly looks impressive. Any thoughts there?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. He's a big kid, but he is light on his feet. He uses his angles really well. Definitely talented. I'm just wondering, who's he going to fight next?
Yeah. That I've had several discussions, and I don't know. He's sort of at a pinnacle place for a decision here.
Exactly.
Does he fight the same type of journeyman, or does he move up to a gatekeeper? Does he fight just a little bit more durable journeyman that has a little more pop to him, or does he actually move up there? And what are his options? At middleweight, what are his options? Who would we like to see him fight? Middleweight is getting a little deep there. I don't think he's ready to really jump in at the highest levels. I could be wrong. He may be that talented with that high knockout percentage.
Yeah, anything is possible. Anything is possible when you got knockout power.
In both hands.
Yes, that's
and
a great
really good boxing skills. He's not without boxing skill. We're seeing he's got good instincts. He'll finish them if he gets them started. He's definitely going to finish them. So I'm really impressed with him, and just so excited to see what comes. Tszyu was such a favorite fighter in the 140-pound division, and you look at what he did to some of his opponents, most notably Ricky Hatton, Zab Judah types. I really am looking forward to see what kind of input he has with his son's training, and what kind of style totally emerges out of this fighter.
Remember, we were having a little conversation about how difficult that dynamic must be to have your coach who is also your father. I wonder how their relationship and their dynamic is.
Yeah. Based on what I'm seeing and based on his father's presence, it looks like they get along for the most part. I personally would like to really see it tested. And see how cohesive they are when he is in a little bit tough, and it comes time for his father to actually really give some instruction, and see if he really follows that instruction. Right now, he's fighting on, instinct. He's fighting on what he's been able to learn, basically good, strong fundamentals. But outside of that, where it's time for him to be as artistic as he is martial, can he do it? And will he do it under tutelage?
We shall see.
We shall see. Upcoming fights, man. I'm really looking forward to see what happens with Josh Taylor and Jose Ramirez. Ramirez he's a tough fighter, a Regis Prograis type, and we saw the dust up that Prograis and Taylor ended up in. Taylor certainly did not look like he came out the victor of that fight, although he was able to lift the title strap from Regis Prograis. I'm wondering if he's game enough for another dust up like that against Ramirez. Have you seen either of these fighters in the ring? Have you been able to see them work?
I've caught a few of Jose Ramirez fights. He's a talented Mexican fighter, kind of like a lot of the Mexican fighters, tough as nails.
Muy macho.
Oh, is he ever? Yeah, he's definitely a tough guy, that's for sure. I don't know. I'm interested to see that fight for sure. I don't know tons. Like I said, I'm more familiar with Jose, but yeah, I think it'll be a great fight.
I think it's a good stiff test. It's really interesting. A lot of times these fighters get a title, and they take a few not easy fights, but a few fights that are certainly winnable before they decide to step in hard. Josh Taylor not holding back, going for the gusto on this one, and really picking a game tough opponent. I don't expect this to be an easy night for Josh Taylor at all. And you know what? I'm ready to see him go in hard again against Regis Prograis. I thought that fight was as tight can be. I did lean a little bit in Josh Taylor's direction. I thought the judges got it right. I think the cards could have been a little bit closer. I think Prograis accepts that as well. Josh Taylor acknowledges what kind of fighter Prograis is, and I think that's a fan-friendly fight. Both guys showed a lot of respect, tremendous respect for one another, and I think we'd love to see that again. I know I would.
Yeah, definitely. And we've seen a lot of great fights with the back and forth. One fighter wins, then comes back and beats the other fighter. And I think they're always pushing each other to the next level. It's always good to have someone that is nipping at your heels kind of thing.
Yeah, if they looked anything like the first fight, I could see a very lucrative 3-fight, a lucrative trilogy happening there. I wouldn't mind seeing a Prograis Ramirez fight if this didn't work out his way. I think that would be a good fight for Prograis to take. I think it's a winnable fight, but I think it's a good, solid fight for him to reestablish himself and put himself in position to challenge again for a title. And I don't see Josh Taylor backing down from that challenge. I think he would take that challenge up once again and rise to the occasion and give us maybe, if we're lucky, 2 more fights just like the first.
Yep.
So let's move forward to another upcoming bout. We're getting closer and closer to a big showdown between Saul Canelo Alvarez and Billy Joe Saunders. 2 fighters who I know you're familiar with. How do you see that playing out?
I gotta say, I think Canelo definitely got this one. It'll be a good, entertaining bout for sure, but I just see him taking it. I feel like you differ of opinion,
though. No, not necessarily.
I think the difference in opinion makes.
That's where we differ in opinion. I think he stops him middle to late rounds. I think Canelo really turns it on based on what I see. You know what? I keep going back to Canelo handling Sergey Kovalev. He wasn't the crusher that he once was, but we've never seen Kovalev just stopped cold the way I was really worried for him at the end of that fight there when he got knocked out. I don't know. Canelo just looks so not just unstoppable right now, but devastatingly so. And Billy Joe better come ready to fight. I don't know if he's looking to survive or if he's looking to win. We'll see what script he's been handed at that point.
I think Canelo is just such an amazing counter puncher. I mean, like, he just exploits the openings, and if you don't see it coming, those are the ones that really hurt. So, yeah, definitely.
How much of that you think he learned from Floyd Mayweather and their encounter? Because he certainly wasn't that guy before. He was a seek and destroy kind of guy. And after that fight, not so much.
I think everybody comes along in your career to teach you something. And I do see a big difference in him. And I think it's it's elevated him yet again. Like I said, when there's someone nipping at your heels or an opponent comes along that challenges you, sometimes it changes you to become a better fighter, you know?
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And I think that was the pinnacle moment for him, and we saw that big change. What do you think about his encounter with his two encounters with Triple G, where we again didn't see him in a seek and destroy mode? We saw him counterpunching, we saw him moving, we saw him trade a little bit and eat some leather. What did you think of those two results?
I thought it was great to see that difference in him. I mean, he went from being like this formidable like body puncher, like you said, seek and destroy, heavy hitter, and then it goes almost to the complete opposite. He's light on his feet. He's quick. His footwork is amazing. He's smart. He's finding the openings. He's countering. He just looks so sharp. It was those were great fights.
Yeah. And it seemed like he had to pull out some of that stuff because all of a sudden he was in with the seek and destroy fighter.
He got all those by majority decision, did he not?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, one of those was a draw.
The first one? The last one was majority
draw.
decision, I think.
Last one was majority decision. And and you know, there are people that still felt that Triple G won that fight. I am not among them. Close fight still. He didn't blow out Triple G, but he did a beautiful job and a much better job at landing more punches than Triple G, you know, than have ever been landed on Triple G. Took a few more chances, made it an exciting fight. I think he forced a lot of the action in that fight. So I wasn't at all surprised to see him come up with a majority decision. I would have probably expected a unanimous decision in that fight. Still close, but you know, when you've got a judge that sees it that way, I'd be I'd be interested to find out what that judge was really looking at, what perspective they took. Did they feel that you know, he just didn't take enough chances? Did they see, you know, some effective punching? And there was by Triple G. Did he feel that that was more damaging than the other two? So it's always interesting when you have a majority decision or split decision,
Definitely.
right?
Definitely. And I know when that split decision, there was a lot of controversy. There was a lot of people who were upset by that split decision. So it's good that they
yes.
You know, got to have the rematch.
Yes. Okay, so let's move on to what everybody's talking about. We're getting closer and closer to the big men. Most notably, Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua. And we've also got signed and moving forward the return of Ruiz coming back against Chris Arreola, who's been not quite mothballed, but off the scene for a little bit. Himself working very hard and looking pretty good. You know, let's start talking about Ruiz and what he's been looking like in the gym. He's there training right now with Saul Canelo Alvarez and Valdez, two WBC champions, and looking focused as ever. Two guys, you know, admittedly for his second fight with Anthony Joshua, Ruiz talked about his outside ring extracurricular activities, we shall call them, and his lack of focus, a little bit of hanging out and too much celebrating the fact that he was at that status and a world champion, Mexican American. You know, when we look at him in the gym working with his trainer, and we look at him working and getting advice from Saul Alvarez and Oscar Valdez, and seeing the discipline and looking at this newly chiseled body, some of his new defensive moves and counter punching moves. What do you think? What do you see happening in the fight with him and Chris Arreola?
Well, I think he's a different man. I think the lighter, the small work that he's been putting in, the obvious increase in his conditioning is going to make him for a little bit of a faster, a little bit of a speedier fighter. And I think I think he's finding his rhythm. Like I see him coming out with this fight, to be honest with you, to put that much of a lifestyle change into effect when you already have a group of people surrounding you who are congratulating you for the accomplishments that you have. You're already having a successful career, but then to want to make that change, I just feel like his mind and his body are working together to line him up for something bigger. And I know that's probably a controversial opinion, because a lot of people are not necessarily the biggest fans of Ruiz. And a lot of people, I don't think, see it going his way for this fight. But I don't know. I have a feeling.
Yeah, look, I judge him. I make determinations about what I think he's going to do and where I think he's going to be based on his potential oftentimes. And definitely have had some knockdown, drag-out debates about where he should be ranked in the top 10. I have him up there in the top 6. A lot of guys don't
Really?
agree, and I have to look.
I'm surprised you put him
absolutely.
in the top 6.
Had the very I was in a discussion group tonight, and they were putting Dillian White and Usyk above Andy Ruiz, and I had a problem with that. One, when he did beat Joshua, yes, Joshua was winning. Joshua should have been winning. He was the champion. He's the bigger guy, the more technical guy. But Ruiz is not without skill. He's got great skill. At 6'2", he's far the smaller man, which is incredible these days in the land of the giants and Jurassic heavyweights. 6'2" is a little guy, it seems, right? So we look at him and we looked at his skill, and he used that skill to gradually get himself closer and closer and closer and upset the heavily favored fighter. So when we saw that happen, many of us said, myself among them, if this young man can get himself into great shape and keep moving forward, to what end are we looking at in potential, right? We're looking at a guy that the world is his oyster. He only has to get better from here, and he's a world champion. He didn't. He went the other way, but not necessarily because he doesn't have the potential to, just because he sloughed off. His trainer said it. His promoter said it. The rest of the camp said it. He said it. He sloughed off, and he paid the price in the rematch. The rematch wasn't indicative of the kind of skill we saw the first time or the kind of potential he possessed. Just in what I've seen in his training, Andy Ruiz has the potential to go ultra far in the sport of boxing and possibly end up holding a belt. Unifying, I don't know, but definitely way more than an inside gatekeeper at the very top.
I have to agree with you there for sure, Hayden. I think he's already caused one of the sport's biggest upsets. So who are we to say that he can't win the title? I mean, and truly, that's the way I see it going for him right now. With Fury,
this is not with Fury aside, sure. This is not, definitely not a Mike Tyson, James Buster Douglas sort of upset that we saw. This is a guy who's here and here with intent, here to stay, a durable heavyweight. The amount of punishment I've seen him be able to soak up just to get close to a guy and get a guy gassed out, because come on, let's face it, that's what he did. He ground down Anthony Joshua, caught him in a lapse, and caught him with the right punch. So he soaked it up. He worked hard enough to get there. Now, a more in shape, lighter, faster, just as powerful or possibly more powerful because of the speed factor, Ruiz, what happens in this division? I think there's about to be a shakeup that people are unexpected. They're not expecting. Here he is getting ready to fight Chris Arreola in a fight that has little significance, but great marquee value, because we know Chris Arreola has always been in an exciting fight. And he's very focused and dedicated to this. He's a little bit smaller, so I think it's going to produce the kind of result. It should produce the kind of result we want to see and talk about later on. I think this fight may be talked about. Even though Ruiz is supposed to win this fight, I think it's going to still surprise a lot of people how he wins this fight. And I, for one, definitely want to see it. I'm a little bit frightened for Arreola, but I definitely want to see this to see what potential he has there and how he's developed it and what potentially may happen in a fight at the very top levels.
I'm excited to see this newer, better version as well. And I think with Arreola also coming off a loss, I don't know. Yeah, I think it's going to be in a devastating fashion.
Yeah. So that brings me to a fight that I know you saw. We've talked about, and I'm not sure who I want to talk about first, what end of the fight, but let's go into talking about Povetkin, Alexander Povetkin. We saw the fight with Dillian Whyte versus Povetkin. And you made some observations during that fight that I certainly agreed with. And then listening to the fight, the fight commentators later on, when I went back and rewatched it, they were saying some of the same things you did, Stephanie. So good call there in making great, brilliant observations. Let's start with Povetkin versus his first fight. What did you see? What did that look like to you?
He just looked not himself. You know what I mean? He looked slow, like his legs weren't working for him.
Yeah, a little bit plodding, a little bit delayed in some of his reactions to me.
Yeah, he was he was the slowest I've ever seen him.
Yeah, certainly no head movement. Not real combinations. Yeah. If I had to put a number to it, I'd say 30% diminished skills from the last time we saw him meet and upset Dillian Whyte, that everyone was, hailing as one of the next best heavyweight things. I'm still not convinced by Dillian Whyte. I watched that first fight and, nothing special. I watched this fight against a less capable Povetkin, and it just looked like a continuation. Has he improved since? Maybe, but he still looked plodding, heavy, better shape than the first time. He's definitely got punching power, but I didn't see anything special. Nothing made me jump up and go, wow, he just served notice to the rest of the division.
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily write him off and say, this is time for retirement for him, but I think he's definitely off course for another heavyweight title fight challenge. Like him fighting Anthony Joshua or Fury or even Ruiz right now, I don't think he stands a chance unless something changes from this last fight.
Yeah, the last time against Povetkin, not this most recent outing, the last time I likened him to a ramped up Dominic Breazeale. Breazeale, who had his hands full in his last fight with Otto Wallin, who was way smaller, and I had winning almost every round up until he ran out of gas, and Breazeale just jumped on that and did what he was supposed to do as the much bigger man, took him out. But I wish Otto Wallin was bigger and moved a little less and was a little more economical with his punches, because I think that he could have actually gotten Breazeale out of there, and he had Breazeale in trouble a few times. I would like to see Otto Wallin be more efficient, be more economical, sit down on his punches, and go after somebody like Dillian Whyte. I don't know that Dillian Whyte can handle him. the people from across the pond seem to think so. We've had some debates back and forth here in the
Fans.
U.S. and in some and we know the Brit fans they're pretty educated. I think though that they
Yeah.
have it wrong. I may be wrong, but I think they have it wrong with Dillian White. I think they're just getting greedy. Look, right now at the highest level, the belts are being contested by Brits. Don't get greedy and start calling every decent Brit fighter into the mix as the next coming of. I don't think it's Dillian White. I think he's big. I think he's powerful. I think he's got decent ring IQ. I think he's decently accurate with his punches. Definitely powerful, but as big as he is, he should be, right? When I look at his footwork, we know how essential that is to being a good fighter. Even in the heavyweight division where they're more fighters than they are boxers, I think that Dillian White ranks extremely low in that department, and that is part of his Achilles heel. The other part of his Achilles heel is the gaping holes in upper body defense. Not much head movement. Doesn't recover his hands. He doesn't keep his chin tucked. When he punches, he's a bit slow. So always open to a counterpuncher if the counterpuncher is smart enough and brave enough to stand in front of him and pivot and take the right angles. I think there are big gaping holes to drive big, giant punches through. What heavyweight besides Tyson Fury do you think can capitalize on that kind of lack of defensive skill and angular fighting?
Ruiz, Anthony Jackson.
What about Usyk? What do you think happens in a fight with Usyk?
Oh, good suggestion. Good suggestion. That one should have came to me right off the bat. I know how much you love him.
Yes. So there are a lot of unanswered questions with Usyk. Anyone that has watched him fight knows he's a spectacular fighter, but he's a little smallish. And many people are talking about this Bridgerweight division. It hasn't materialized yet, so let's not call him that. But I don't think that size would matter. I think he boxes rings around Dillian White. Again, I think our friends from across the pond might tend to disagree. I think Usyk has a great fight IQ. I think he's poised right now legitimately in the top 6 or 7 fighters and ready to take out a guy like Dillian White and solidify himself in that spot.
I mean, I have to agree with you. I think when it comes to fight IQ, he's definitely got the edge. The physicality, maybe not so much, but we've seen before that doesn't necessarily always determine who wins.
Right. I think he may be a bit smaller, but he certainly is faster. And punch for punch, he's a 3-1, maybe 4-1. Sure, that one could be devastating. But I think Usyk carries enough pop to stop a guy who has been shown to be stoppable. AJ certainly showed us what he could do with Dillian White.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that was quite a performance.
Yeah, for sure. Let's move to what I'm sure you're eager to talk about in the big man. Tyson Fury, AJ. We're getting closer and closer. It seems like before we know it, that fight's going to be here. How is that fight going to play out?
That is the fight that everybody is talking about. And I think, I'm definitely siding with Fury on this one. I think he's got the edge.
Oh, I know it.
I see him winning. I don't even see it necessarily going to the judges' scorecards. I think he's got this one. I think it's going to be a stoppage, and I am so excited.
So I was in the boxing group online that I frequent, and today one of the gents from a podcaster whose show I've been on and have had numerous verbal sparring sessions with, said to me that he thinks that at 6'9", and as mobile as he is. But at 6'9", Tyson Fury is feather-fisted and doesn't think that he can hurt a lot of guys outright. What do you say to that, Stephanie?
Um, I say I dare you to step in the ring with Fury.
Hey,
No,
having a
I
podcast is having the podcast talking about boxing isn't the same as actually boxing, right?
no, definitely not. I think Fury is proven more than once that he's got some powerful punches. So, yeah, I'd have to disagree with
Yeah,
that one for sure.
yeah. Now I wouldn't call him a one-punch knockout artist. I honestly don't know if I look at him. It may be his style of fighting. I don't know if he can be. Maybe he can. What we do see is his boxing prowess. What we do see time and time again is his skills on display. His offense, his defense, combination punching, moving around like a light heavy or a cruiserweight or a smallish heavyweight on such a big, tall, lanky frame, awkward angles that punches come from, and the fact that he's super durable. I think we see all of these things in one place. It takes me back to look at. I just mentioned Otto Wallen. Otto Wallen gave Tyson Fury a darn good fight. He was cut in that fight by Otto Wallen. Too bad Otto Wallen's so small, but we saw Tyson Fury have to grit it out and win a fight. We saw what happened in the Deontay Wilder fight, the first one, and him have to grit through some adversity, get up from a knockdown that we thought nobody would ever be able to get up from, and have Deontay Wilder backing up in that round. In their rematch, we saw pure dominance. To say he had no power, when we look at Deontay Wilder's face at the end of that fight, and you see the swelling, especially near the ear of and cheek of Deontay Wilder, and listen to Deontay Wilder's comments that something must have been in his glove, we know that this guy is anything but feather-fisted. I think he has consistent power. It may not be one punch knockout power, but I certainly think he has consistent punching power in both hands. Speed is power, so I think that adds to it. Mm-hmm. And I think he has just this laser accuracy with awkward punches, and they land in the same spots over and over again and can be really damaging. He really breaks down fighters quite often with this consistent punching power and then stops them. I don't know. I think he may have more surprising power than people realize, and certainly showed Deontay Wilder, wanted to go out on his shield, has all the heart in the world, but I didn't see that fight finishing any different if it hadn't been stopped.
Exactly. I mean, the man is 6'7". It's impossible for him to have feather punches. He's a big
and
guy,
he's a big heavyweight.
He's a big heavyweight, but more importantly than that, he has that like awkward precision. So I think Joshua, he's an amazing, masterful puncher, but sometimes he's a little. He kind of tells. He has tells, sometimes he can telegraph his punches, and I think that Fury is gonna slip one of those awkward punches in there, and if you're not expecting it, those are the ones.
Yeah. So I think the amateur experience is going to come into play as well. The lack thereof for Anthony Joshua, because you do see that, and this is a really funny point I'm about to make. I think that fighting a bit like an amateur as a heavyweight is a great thing. And I think that Tyson Fury does it well. He moves a lot. He utilizes a lot of angles and a lot of combinations. right? Whereas Joshua isn't super mobile and is very mechanical, not much head movement.
Yeah.
His punches technically look good. Uh,
Yeah.
and everything looks pretty, all around looks pretty solid. The amount of amateur experience that I see that Tyson Fury has and the super amateur style that he uses makes me believe, coupled with his fight IQ and ring awareness, he will be 2 and 3 steps ahead of Anthony Joshua and be able to see what Joshua is thinking about doing. Not just doing at the time, but wanting to do and thinking about doing. And I think he's going to have the plan way ahead of time to be able to negate that.
I think you hit the nail on the head. I mean, Tyson Fury's had that experience where he's gotten to prepare for so many different styles, which makes things a lot easier. It makes things more predictable. Yeah, I just see him putting that experience to his advantage.
Now, I do have to credit Anthony Joshua's team for having the right strength and conditioning coach, for changing what they're doing with a guy who came in looking like a bodybuilding Adonis into the sport. Good looking guy, really personable, clean. I like his image for the sport. And I do think they've done a great amount of work with a natural athlete. That being said, I think it was necessary to change that big body type, that big over muscular body type that burns so much energy so quickly. You know, I think he depleted glycogen stores so quickly, especially fighting a guy like Andy Ruiz, trying to keep up a pace before that he just started shutting down or looked to take a break and ended up getting caught. I think they changed his body. When you look at his new physique and you look at the fact that he's able to sustain a little bit higher pace, I think they've done an excellent job. And I think if he was fighting anybody else, anybody but Tyson Fury, I think they'd be in for a world of trouble. That being said, he is fighting Tyson Fury, and he's going to have a whole lot to contend with in a faster pace and having to walk a guy down. I don't know what size ring they're going to use, but if they use a big one and with a thin mat and springy floor, he may be in trouble. Of all the heavyweight contenders out there right now, of all the people that could challenge Tyson Fury, I think he is the most equipped to pull off an upset. Because let's face it, anybody at the top right now is fighting for the second spot, not the number one. The number one spot, I think, definitively belongs to Tyson Fury. And you know, unless they're fighting him, I think they're fighting for the second spot. Even when most are fighting him, they're still fighting to keep the second spot. I think he's fast. I think he's technically sound, but I don't think Joshua has the IQ. If we don't get a focused, in shape Tyson Fury, yeah, sure, an upset can happen. And maybe if he decides to walk away at that point, Joshua reigns supreme. I don't think that's going to happen.
I don't think that's going to happen. I mean, I agree with you. If Fury comes in and he's not the fighter that we know and love, yeah, maybe an upset can happen. But I think he's taken this one seriously. I think the buzz created around this one is definitely fueling him. And I picture who we know and love coming in and stepping in that ring and coming out victorious.
Yeah, I have to agree. I'm sure Joshua's going to train for the fight of his life. He's an athlete. He's a natural competitor. He's ready to go. He's been training super hard. I think we'll be in for an exciting fight. Before we get out of here, Stephanie, I want your prediction. Knockout or decision?
Knockout.
Knockout. Round prediction?
I think maybe the third round. I think
Wow,
Fury's
an
going to
early
go
one.
everyone. He has power.
You think he's going to jump right on him? There you have
Yeah,
it, folks. Fight
I hope
prediction.
so.
Stephanie made a bold prediction. Thanks again, guys, for joining us here and going through this segment of the last round. We will see you next week. Enjoy.
Thanks so much, Hayden. Thanks
And we're
everyone for
out.
tuning in.